It's time to kill your darlings. If you've never heard that writing advice before, it's talking about what needs to be cut from your story to make it better. Not every scene that you write belongs in your final draft. I'm Zara Hoffman, founder of Inimitable Books, and today I'm going to be talking about how to identify essential scenes versus filler so you can ruthlessly cut them out without sacrificing your story in too many manuscripts. Writers include scenes because they happened, not because they're interesting. They write every moment and the story drowns in unnecessary detail. Or they keep scenes they love because the writing is good, maybe even exceptional, but it doesn't advance the plot, develop characters, or serve any other story purpose aside from this. The hardest part of writing isn't the drafting. It's figuring out which scenes to keep and which to cut. Every scene needs to earn its place in your story by doing real work, not just existing. If a scene doesn't do character or plot development, it's probably filler, no matter how well written it. The best scenes do both simultaneously. Story beats are the essential moments that structure your narrative. Filler is everything else, the connective tissue that you think you need but often don't. Think about when you're eating a meal. Normally, not a lot happens, but if there is a scene where there is an argument or passive aggressiveness or something upsetting happens, then that is drama and that can give plot and character development in one go. In Down the Well by Veronica King, there are multiple meal scenes with our main character, Lore, and her troublesome parents, but whenever they are sharing a meal together, it has tension, reveals who Lore is, who her parents are, and establishes the conflict she experiences at home, which makes her miss her grandmother all the more and become even more attached to the bracelet she has. That explains why she fights the shadow creature and falls down the well. That scene I actually quote in our last video, so if you want to check that out, please do. Filler includes characters traveling from place to place with nothing happening other than the fact that they're traveling. Daily routine scenes that don't have conflict or any revelations in them. Repetitive scenes that make the same point multiple times without adding anything new. Info dumps disguised as scenes, and having beautiful descriptions that don't serve the character or plot. Describing a beautiful pastoral scene is nice and all, but unless something is going to happen in that scene, it doesn't matter. Conversations that don't advance anything. You can have a character travel or go through routines if something significant is happening during those activities. If not, you should be summarizing. The example I gave in our video about pacing is of a character skimming over the fact that she's been traveling because it wasn't interesting to see every moment of it. You need to only show activities that create conflict, reveal character, or advance plot. The question isn't, is this realistic? The question is this necessary? Because in fiction, we normally don't see characters actually eating food, sleeping, or having to go to the bathroom. Some people might say we need to add more of that in, and that is a personal choice, but you don't need to add in those details as frequently as they happen in real life because this is. And every scene that you put in your book needs to have conflict to make it interesting. Conflict doesn't have to be overt yelling arguments. It can be passive aggressive or pressed tension, unspoken resentment, or even a single character wrestling with something internal. In Mother Mercy by Chandra Arthur, we have the main character, Abby, spending a lot of time observing her targets before she eventually attacks them. One of the cases in the book involves her having a lot of self-doubt because the situation confuses her and doesn't match her expectations, which would allow her to make her decisions quickly, definitively, and with confidence like she normally does. There's not a lot of dialogue. She's hiding out. She can't let people know that she's there. And there isn't a lot of action because she's just observing the people from her van during these internal struggle moments. But that's what seemed necessary. Every scene needs to have a clear goal for the character at that time and an obstacle preventing them from easily achieving it. And I talk about how to write POVs in this video. But you also need to have an obstacle for what they want in each scene. Otherwise, the story would end too quickly. In A Diamond Bright and Broken by Holly Davis, Cadence is looking for answers in her parents' room. Her goal is straightforward, to find information about her gift or curse. Her obstacle is clear, the danger of being caught by her parents or the household staff. It's a simple setup, but it creates tension because both the goal and the obstacle matter. The goal for your character in any given scene can be specific knowledge they are seeking, persuading someone to do something or doing something themselves, escaping or avoiding something, making a difficult decision, or understanding something. The obstacle can be someone or something actively opposing them, having limited time or resources, missing information, which could are considered a resource of knowledge, having internal resistance or fear, environmental changes, or conflicting priorities. If your point of view character enters a scene wanting nothing and facing no resistance, then the scene is boring and flat and might not need to exist at all. If you think it needs to exist, then it definitely needs work. You don't want to waste scenes on exposition when you can deliver the information more efficiently, or at the very least in a more interesting way. Heirs of Bone and Sea by Kay Adams demonstrates this perfectly. The two main characters share their backstory with each other while they are in the middle of fighting each other. One is trying to kill the other while one is simply trying to survive. And that is a hell of a first meeting. If they were just sitting and talking with the same dialogue, it would be a boring scene, but because it's interspersed with action, the scene accomplishes multiple things. It establishes the characters' initial relationship, although it is anything but friendly. It maintains exciting pacing and kicks off the rest of the plot. The information delivery doesn't slow down the scene, it's woven into something that's already happening. So if you're writing a scene whose only purpose is to deliver information, you need to find a better way to deliver that same knowledge through a different method, or at least interspersed with something else happening. Alternatively, you could condense it into a brief summary and move on. To determine if a scene is necessary, try cutting it without making any changes and see what breaks in your story. If you cut a scene and the plot still makes sense, then the scene was filler and doesn't need to be put back in at all. If character motivations still track, the scene was filler. If your later payoffs still work, then the scene was filler. But if you cut a scene and it makes a plot hole, then that scene was necessary. If character, behavior, or plot events no longer seem substantiated or motivated properly, then the scene was necessary setup. And if a later payoff doesn't work, then that scene was definitely necessary. So don't keep scenes just because you wrote them. They need to be there if the story needs it. Sometimes you'll find that a scene has one crucial element, but a lot of filler around it. In those cases, you don't need to cut the whole scene. You just need to trim it down to the essential parts, maybe even combine it with another scene that is similarly afflicted. And here are some mistakes I see with scene writing. Unnecessary steps. You don't need to see them doing their daily routine. You don't even need to see them doing it once when you are establishing the normal world, unless something unusual happens to disrupt their normal routine. You need to skip to the important parts of your story because that's what's interesting. Only write a scene when something interesting is happening. This goes back to scene versus summary in our pacing video. Repetitive content. One scene of a character arguing about trust is enough. We don't need 5 variations of it unless it is escalating or developing the issue further. If you're writing multiple points of view and 2 characters experience the same event with identical interpretations, you only needed one perspective. Each scene or POV needs to add something new. Having beautiful but purposeless scenes slows down the pace, and not for a good reason. You need to keep the story going. Recap. If you're just having characters sit around and rehash what happened without deciding or processing anything, then that's a recap that should be cut or at least condensed. Trust readers to understand what occurred and only sparingly rehash what has already happened to form a plan moving forward. Set up scenes that exist only for one later moment. If a scene's only purpose is to establish a single element later in a story, that isn't enough to support an entire scene. See if you can take that and put it somewhere else, or maybe you need to rewrite that part of the story so that you don't need an extra scene. Now, if you are talking about how certain scenes will set up world building that affect multiple things in your story, then definitely keep those as long as character development or plot development is happening in those scenes, like I've been saying throughout this video. So, how do you audit your scenes? You should list out the scenes in your manuscript. This could be one and the same as your list of chapters, but if you write multi-scene chapters, then list out the scenes, not the chapters. If you can answer these 4 questions for each one, then you can probably keep the scene. What is the POV character's main goal in the scene? What conflict exists? How does the character or the plot change by the end of the scene compared to the beginning of the scene? And what would break in your story if you cut it? Mark each scene as progressing plot, character, or both. If you have too many scenes marked as just one or the other, consider revising some so that you have a better balance. And third, you need to look for patterns. Do you have 3 scenes in a row that are just talking? Then you need to work on that. Not necessarily because the scene isn't moving plot or character ahead, but because it will feel repetitive, which goes back to our problems in the pacing video. You can have some patterns, but they still need to be spaced out. Check your transitions. Scenes that exist only to transition from one to another are usually unnecessary and can be condensed or cut. Ask beta readers which scenes they skimmed or found slow so that you have a place to start with when it comes to cutting scenes during your revision. We have a whole video on the different types of readers you should be having on your manuscript throughout the process, and you can check that out. And finally, you need to remember that you need to be ruthless in your revision and editing, but you also need to be thoughtful. Don't cut scenes just to make your word count lower. Cut scenes because they're not pulling their weight or because the narrative is better without them, and for no other reason. If this video helped you think about scene construction differently, the Inimitable Writing Community's Query Ready course includes worksheets all about improving and evaluating scenes in your manuscript. You'll learn how to audit your scenes, identify which ones to cut, and learn how to make every scene earn its place. Membership also includes Q&As with me where you can ask questions about specific story struggles you have rather than just generic publishing ones. The link for that is in the description below. Be sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any future things coming from this channel. Up next, I'll be discussing how to write dialogue that sounds like real people, because once you've identified the scenes you need to make sure the conversations in those scenes feel authentic. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had to cut a scene, whether or not it caused you a lot of pain or felt like a relief. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.